Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Think About It with me, Victoria Azarenka.
Thanks for having me on your show, Vika. I am so excited to chat with you.
My self-worth was attached to my identity as an athlete.
What neutral does is basically say, this is good or this is bad, but either way, it's real.
I know you've talked a lot about being held hostage.
And I started just doing a lot more research and having more open, honest conversations with my patients about how food could potentially help with them.
Let's say God exists and you arrive at the pearly gates. What would you like the God to tell you?
That I can come in.
Well, idea for this particular show was kind of developed on the go, I will say. I always wanted to do something like a show. I'm always a fan of watching shows where they interview people and getting to know people through their different stories, their challenges, what got them to success, what were the turning points. I knew I wanted to do a show. I didn't know how I'm gonna do it yet, but this was something that I thought it was interesting during the COVID to kind of create something that I can do via Zoom or FaceTime, whatever it is that was possible. So that was a cool opportunity to also meet some new people. One of the parts in professional sport is missing because you don't necessarily want to show your vulnerability and what really is who you are. We're not just athletes, we're also human beings with different interests, different viewpoints. Only few people who can relate to me being a tennis player, but a lot of people can relate to me being as a mom. A lot of people can relate to me going through some different challenges. So I wanted to share that experience that people can kind of relate and understand that people, you know, with successful careers are also going through a lot of tough things in life. I had to do a lot of research because I wanted to be very well prepared that I can move the conversation in different directions. But to prepare, I also needed to look at myself because it's a reverse role for me. I'm not used to that. And it was really fun, like to go through it, not at the beginning, but further on, yes. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise, Vika, it's really a great opportunity always to spend time with people, I think, in any field that have made it to the top.
The episode with Trevor, I think that this was part of the journey that I was kind of going through myself. I've learned about Trevor already before, prior to doing an interview, and kind of the philosophy that he's been working on, and it was interesting for me to hear more of how it can be applied in certain situations.
What neutral does is basically say, this is good or this is bad, but either way, it's real. Okay, I lost my job, I lost a set, I lost my marriage. My marriage is great. I won a Grand Slam. Whatever, it goes to the truth. But it says what's going to happen next is going to be based on what Vika Azarenka does, not what happened or how she feels about the future.
We always hear about something different that you have to be one way or the other way, and here is a tool where you just stay neutral. How do you describe that neutral approach with an intention of doing better?
If you remove negativity, then you can be positive. The problem is if you're trying to be positive at the same time as negative, and negative so much more powerful. I mean, think of American politics today. A negative message versus a positive message has no chance.
This tool is understanding that you just need to be a bit more still and neutral, and you still have to do the work for you to be able to go to a certain way, because I feel like the illusion of just positivity creates no action. I've been learning a lot about you before this talk, but I'm super excited to learn even more and go deeper into conversation. From my perspective of what she's doing, the magnitude of it is huge. It's very scary. There's a lot on the line. What I do kind of has the same reaction. And I wouldn't say surprised, it's just inspired to see another athlete going and breaking records in their fields and still have the same passion and ambition to move forward and to develop women's sport.
For somebody to go in front of 25,000 people and play tennis can be scary-ish.
It's terrifying to me.
For me, your fear is much more significant than my fear.
We all build up our own tolerances for what we fear and what we're not fearful of. I can't imagine being in your shoes. To me, that sounds way scarier than what I do to me, because I don't have that experience of like expanding beyond the comfort zone.
I have a different feeling about fearless when, it doesn't mean that you don't have fear. It means that nothing will stop you.
That competitive edge, I think it's within all of us, like whether you're a female entrepreneur or like a female athlete, that drive to be the best version of yourself is really important. And with climbing, like women and men are so capable to achieve similar, and like women can outperform men in some regards too. And it's like, I've just always wanted to, I guess, like prove myself to myself. And in a way, like you mentioned, like tennis was that almost like golden ticket.
I would say women athletes are inspiring because we constantly have to prove ourselves more in any job, in any sport, even being a parent or anything like this. It just feels like it's always a heavier load. I think women take it very, very seriously, and they push the needle, further and further and further. Thank you for being on my show.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Lewis as well faced a lot of, how he described in his book, wearing different masks in front of different people, and that's exhausting. I think that's really exhausting, and it doesn't give you peace in your life. When you put yourself out there in the public eye, it's very difficult to be open and be free because you always constantly feel judged. You're afraid, what if people don't like me? What if people don't do this? So you always overthink, and it's very hard to be fully yourself, especially for young athletes.
These little traumas build up, and we build walls and what I like to call masks. That's why I wrote a book called The Mask of Masculinity, because I developed so many masks where I was like, no one in the world is ever going to take advantage of me. I'm going to be so big, strong, and successful that they have to respect me. And once I started to study this and learn these tools, it allows me to have better intimacy in my relationship, allows me to be a better leader in my business, allows me to be a better athlete, all these different things.
I don't know if I'll be his opponent, but maybe we can play doubles or something together. I actually haven't seen him play, but yeah, definitely would love to spend some time, and I think we'll build a pretty great relationship.
I've always been obsessed with, like, how do I get the edge? And I'm sure you have been as well. What's that little edge that I can beat out my competition? Because I didn't have the physical speed, but I had great hands as a football player. I could catch, I had vision, I had toughness, but I wasn't the fastest. And so I had a disadvantage there. I had to have another edge, and my mindset was what allowed me to focus on it.
Well, Rupi, thank you so much for being on my show. It's such pleasure. When the first time I listened to Dr. Rupi's TED Talks, I was really fascinated by his delivery. He was very passionate about his job and what he wanted to bring across, and that genuine goodness that he wanted to kind of share with the world, and the importance of your health. And what I loved about it, that he's trying to show it with his example.
So I'm privileged to work in the NHS in London. I have patients from all different types of backgrounds, whether it be Chinese, Korean, Indian, African. I can't be giving them a kale salad or suggesting like the same sort of recipe to everyone. You've got to be respectful of their backgrounds. With kids, I just think we need to introduce like the playful aspect of food, the knowledge of where food comes from, the importance of soil, because these this generation of kids are going to be the new activists that promote a healthy planet as well as healthy bodies on a healthy planet. And so trying to get that into schools as well as medical schools is something that I'm trying to work on via the non-profits as well.
Well, my nutrition has changed over the years, and I've learned so many things about nutrition by being an example, by trying out new things, and some things worked, some things didn't work. And I wanted to also learn about more, because I have my son Leo, is how I can ingrain a good habits, because I believe that that's the best way of being a good example.
I feel a responsibility. A lot of kids are watching what I do. My son is gonna watch what I do, so I'm trying to be the most mindful as I can, and that's why I want to learn for myself. I want to bring that kind of awareness to people for them to hear it maybe once again, but maybe from a different perspective.
One of the really interesting parts, I think, of this episode that we covered was how we are professional athletes are responsible in marketing certain products that may not necessarily be good for you, or at least if you're not doing sports.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because people don't recognize just how unique we are, and just because you go gluten-free, because a tennis player has an intolerance and they feel better, and does not necessarily mean that it's going to happen. The same thing is going to happen for you.
The biggest lesson I will say is the importance of your nutrition and what you put in your body, and I will say nutrition specifically, not diet, because the word diet always feels as a deficit, not necessarily not eating what you like, but just be mindful of what you put in your body and what long-term effect that can have. I'm very excited to have you on my show, and I'm really excited to learn more about you. The most impactful lesson with Robin was her approach to life. Her answers were always upbeat, they were always on point, and they were always motivating. What would be, maybe not necessarily your advice, but something of a little story that somebody can use and get inspired by?
Sometimes we wish, we pray, we hope for the partner or the dream job or the whatever, a material thing, a house, a car, and then we get it, and we pretty quickly forget how badly we wanted it once we get it. So I think that puts me back into an appreciation of like, oh my gosh, like there were times when I couldn't even afford the New York City subway. Ask yourself, what is it that I have right now that I used to wish, hope, pray, and dream for? Guaranteed there's something, at least one thing.
One of the interesting things she told me was, I said, how do you deal with a difficult situation in the moment? And she said, well, I look at it from like a zoom point of view. If it's going to be important for me in 5 years, if it's still important, then maybe I'll think twice about it.
That zoom out effect. It's all this same conversation, right? So it's self-talk, it's having a relationship enough with the conversation that's going on here, and enough perspective to know what's going on in the world, and to say, gosh, even on my worst days, I'm still surviving. We've made it through 100% of our worst days. Let's bring in a little bit of perspective, because there is someone who would trade places with me right now.
Her energy is, I could feel it through the Zoom call, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to work out. And I've already felt her energy before, because I was doing some of her Peloton classes, and we've done ESPN race before. I was a bit more prepared for that, block of energy that's coming.
I believe that a queen pivots, and even when her crown slips, she just figures out a way.
Thank you so much for joining my show. I am really excited for our talk. I prepared to interview Dr. Jandal. It was probably longer than anybody else, and the importance was for me to know is the impact on kids' health with some of the brain injuries. A lot of times people talk about professional athletes having, brain injuries, and in football and all other sports.
The true way to think of the brain comes from how neuroscientists have been writing about the brain for decades in our journals, and is to think of it as a garden or an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And to begin with, you are born with more seeds and more plants than you hold on to. It's a garden that has to be cultivated. You cultivate it by learning things. You cultivate it by experiences, and you cultivate it by taking on challenges that you usually don't.
The similarities in performing and being a brain surgeon, the only one I can think even after this interview is that I don't think that the brain recognizes fully if this is your life on the line or when you're playing a sport event and you treat it like your life is on the line.
You know, for you, it's joy. For me, it's that flow, that experience that comes from performing under pressure. I love that. That's meditation for me, is where you focus, but not distracted. And that's a unique feeling I think performers get, whether it's rock stars or athletes. And I think complex surgery is also something like that. It's a release of maneuvers. It's not a checklist of going through like repairing an engine with 150 steps.
The complexity of the brain was just fascinating really to learn, and I think the passion that Dr. Jandal has to still learn about it after many years of practicing and researching is amazing.
That's what brain training does. It's a habit. We're always talking about cosmetic stuff. Why not an element of cultivating all those neurons with that lush environment that's inside our mind?
I have last little segment. It's very simple, few questions. What is your favorite word?
Nuance.
Incredible.
Hustle.
Love.
Fierce.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
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 If heaven exists, what would you like God to tell you?
What took me so long?
You've done your best, and that's been enough.
You put your best foot forward and did what you could to utilize the gifts I gave you.